We all know Mazda as the Zoom brand, referring of course to their sportier than normal driving dynamics. It's also because Mazdas have traditionally had more horsepower than their competitors at the expense of fuel economy. But that just won't cut it anymore in this new green era of cars, and so Mazda has developed a high-tech 40 mile per gallon engine. And here it is, using a whole host of technologies, everything from direct injection to dual variable valve timing, just making sure the components are as light as possible with as little drag as possible, and then adding on a pretty high 12-to-1 compression ratio. This fuel-efficient engine is no slouch either. It makes 155 horsepower and 148 foot-pounds of torque. Compare that to the 2-liter MZR engine, and that's actually a 5% increase in peak horsepower and a 10% increase in peak torque. But more important, says Mazda, is that it makes about 15% more torque in the low and mid-range. So making all that extra power isn't actually all that difficult. It's making that power and making it fuel efficient at the same time that is. Impressively, this new car gets 28 miles per gallon in the city and 40 miles per gallon on the highway. Now compare that to last year's 2-liter engine that made 25 miles per gallon in the city and 33 on the highway. It's a significant jump forward. We just drove the SkyActiv powered Mazda 3 on some of Southern California's famous canyon roads, and we can say that it's really kept that zoom spirit. Now, along with all the other great sort of handling features that Mazda brings to the table, one big reason for that is that it doesn't have these ultra low rolling resistance tires with absolutely no grip at all, which is sort of another testament Mazda really wants to keep the enjoyable drive of the vehicle, even though surprisingly it gets 40 miles per gallon. Despite the added power and torque, the engine still feels a bit lethargic around town, and that, maybe have something to do with the fact that the car isn't sort of as highly optimized as we were at first led to believe. Mazda actually hasn't used their impressive 4.2.1 header that they talked about when the SkyActiv engine came out initially, and that's because they actually really couldn't make it work with this platform. So they're promising it will be available in the CX-5 crossover when that debuts in a year's time or so, and that'll really up the torque levels on the engine. Much of the way a car's driving experience is perceived comes down to the transmission, and so Mazda has developed a new SkyActiv automatic and a SkyActiv manual transmission. We actually have the 6-speed manual right now, and it's a lot of fun with some really short throws. As for the automatic, we were driving that earlier in the day, and we do have some issues with it. Mazda's really sort of claimed some impressive things with this new transmission, merging sort of the best aspects of a dual clutch and a traditional automatic, delivering impressive shift times of just 150 milliseconds, which is in many cases faster than a shift you get in a dual clutch transmission. So that's impressive. The problem is that Mazda doesn't really point out that while it will shift really fast, it doesn't want to do it all that often. And so on some of those canyon roads, when you put your foot down, even with significant throttle force, it still just doesn't want to change gears, and you almost have to be entirely to the ground before it will shift. That's not entirely unusual in a segment like this, especially on a high fuel efficiency model. We just expect a little bit more from the Zoom brand. And inside, the dash gets a mild restyle with some new HVAC control knobs, and on SkyActiv models, the gauges get a nice blue background. There's also some new seat fabrics, and on top of it all, a class-exclusive blind spot monitoring system that's optional. So what else is new with the 2012 Mazda 3? Well, for starters, there's a new front and rear bumper, which I think a lot of people will say really improves the look of the car. It also has improved the car's aerodynamics with a 0.27 coefficient of drag, which is class leading. On top of that, there are a couple other minor features you'd expect: new 16 and 17-inch wheel designs, plus you've got a couple extra new colors you can choose from on the outside of the vehicle. Also new is the price. While the new SkyActiv engine seems like it could be a replacement both for the fuel-efficient 2-liter and the powerful 2.5-liter, Mazda has chosen to get rid of none of the old engines and now offer the SkyActiv as a mid-range alternative. So they now have 3 in what is quite possibly the most confusing trim level lineup of any automaker. The base 2-liter MZR engine now gets a price discount to $15,200, whereas the top level with the powerful 167 horsepower 2.5-liter now starts at $21,300. And finally, there are the SkyActiv models, with the sedan starting at $18,450 and the hatch at $18,950. Now, that's going to cost you more than $3,000 over a base 2-liter MZR engine model, but you do get a bit more horsepower, and Mazda tried to offset the cost with some nicer features inside. And let's not forget the most important feature: 40 miles per gallon.